welcome to Vacations Live, where we are talking all things Disney this month in honor of 2021 packages coming out in May. So we are very, very excited to be joined by Elizabeth Schlesener from Global Dream Vacations. Hi, Elizabeth. Thanks for being here today.
Fine.
So Elizabeth is a Disney mom extraordinaire, as well as, like myself, a Disney travel professional. We specialize in Disney and love to talk about it. Love to wear our Disney ears. So, yes, up top, woohoo! And today, Elizabeth is actually, she has beautiful, beautiful children and has been to Disney at all different stages of their growth. And so one thing we really wanted to talk today about how you do that with little kids, like rides that can be problematic, and giving you our best tips on how to take those littles to Disney, have them love it, things that you may not think about or anticipate before you get there that can really make all the difference in your trip. So we are super excited to get to talk to you guys today, and let's go ahead and get started. So Elizabeth, now give us okay, you've been to Disney a billion times. And I know when we were talking in prep for this, you're like, okay, you've been there when your kids were all different ages. So when, what did it look like as you guys went to Disney? What ages have you taken your kids at?
Well, the first trip with kids, we went with our boys were 3 years old, 2 years old, and I was pregnant with our coming daughter. So that was the initial. I'd certainly been to Disney before, but you're trying to gauge. Don't lose a kid. Don't have meltdowns. Just because you're traveling anywhere you go with kids. So that's when we started. Our kids are now 14, 12, 9, and 5. And so we've done it kind of all through the stages. So it's, it's different each time, but just trying to keep in mind of, your kids, when they're going to get tired and cranky. And it's even going to be that way in Magic Kingdom or whatever part of Disney you're in. So just trying to gauge how to make it a successful day for your family.
Yes, yeah. And it's something we talk a lot about when we're planning with families, right? That, Disney unfortunately does not erase the nature of kids. So they do still get tired, and it can be hot. And, I'll never forget one of our first times going, and our kids were super little, like 2 and 1 or something. And when we went, and they wanted to sit and watch a fountain, and it was killing me. It was literally killing me, because I'm like, are you serious?
Yeah.
And I think sometimes for parents, it is something going into a Disney trip to set expectations at, the goal is to have a magical time together.
Yes.
And realizing that may look different from an adult brain than it does from a kid brain, yeah. Right? And so sometimes that means we're going to spend extra long at the fountain, even though you're like, seriously, we could have gone to the park. Why are we here? But it becomes a special memory, and it's not the only memory, but it is. It's a very different mindset going into it. Like, hey, kids are still kids even when they're at Disney.
Yeah.
And I know, we were talking about too, okay, rides that we warn clients about, because sometimes as an adult, seeing Disney through your child's eyes is different as you plan. So
yes.
when you work with clients, or when you've worked with your own families, what were some rides that, even though littles are allowed on them because there's not a height requirement, can still be problematic?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's great as we talk about, your kids. So we have kids who are super adventurous. The bigger, the faster, the better. And then you have kids because I have that spectrum. I have the ones that love adventure, and then I have the ones who are the hesitant putting their feet, to the ride. So one funny ride that I didn't expect to go poorly was the Spaceship Earth in Epcot. The ride that's in the big ball, and any age can go on. And so their brothers were doing some other things, and so I had our 2 girls, and they were, they were 4 and 8. And so we got on this ride. Surely this isn't a problem. And it was dark, and you start going up to the top as if it's a giant roller coaster. And they are panicking. And then I'm starting to question, wait, this is the right ride, right? Like I didn't put us, you have that panic
It's
moment.
Space
And then
Mountain.
it says, and then you're going through, and it's kind of the history of mankind and all that. And some of the characters just are, to a 4-year-old, are creepy. And so that was one of the funny, not happening again. It kind of set the tone for the morning in a bad light, and we revived from it, but that was one that we will not do again with young kids.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And I think that's a good point. A lot of parents don't think about dark rides being scary because Disney does do a lot of, and there's more dark rides than you would think if, like we catalog Disney rides in our brains because that's what we do as Disney experts, but not everybody does. And Disney has a lot of rides that are dimly lit so that they can light the surrounding areas with like this iridescent UV light. And so for a lot of kids, there's more rides than you would think that are in the dark, like Spaceship Earth, or I know like you had, like your daughter freaked out on Frozen, right? Like Frozen Ever After, which is supposed to be like...
She knew that there was that little rush, and it was after this, the Spaceship Earth experience, and so I think that's what set it off. But you need to know if your child doesn't like the fact that it's going to have a moment of whoosh, that's, you're trying to gauge that as well. And then they have brothers who are riding, Expedition Everest, and, they, so it's funny how you need to know your kids. Yeah.
Yes.
But that one, yes. Any little tips that people can give their agents of, child quirks sometimes are helpful to have a good trip.
Yeah. So I know we often ask, like, how does your child feel about the dark? How do they feel about drops? Because there's a couple rides, both Frozen and Pirates of the Caribbean have that kind of dark drop. And you can prep your kid for that. Like you can tell them and explain what's going to happen. And, some things, so just some top tips, like we recommend, I know a lot, like watching a video of the ride. There's lots of those on YouTube. Parents don't always realize that there's tons of people who have recorded their going through the ride, and you can kind of show your kid and see how, if it's harder if Disney is a surprise, but it's actually really nice if you can show them some of those things before they go, or even in a book, so they have some frame of reference for what they're going to experience. So whether it's a drop or in the dark, or even like spinning fast, some kids love that, and for some kids, like the teacups are a nightmare. So, you have to kind of think about what does your child enjoy, even on a playground. Like sometimes it's hard for parents to transpose that into a theme park world, but it's like, okay, does your kid like the swings? Like, do they like going up high and coming down low? Do they like spinning around on something, or that goes fast, or does that freak them out? And that can give us as agents a good gauge for like, okay, these are the rides then, whether it's in the dark, like Peter Pan. I know we had talked beforehand. Peter Pan is one of both of our favorite rides, right? In Fantasyland. I love Peter Pan. It is absolutely one of my favorites. And it was like the first ride I took my kids on at their first trip. And I was just shocked because they were scared out of their minds because it was dark. And I never even thought about it. I was so disappointed as their parent that they didn't love my favorite Fantasyland ride, and realizing it from their eyes. They had never experienced something like that. Had no idea what was going to happen, weren't used to the whole motion of the ride. And so I think one of my tips as an agent is, just like you said, it started our day off rough. That experience at Epcot started our day off, and it made our kid really squeamish for the rest of the day. I know we always plan to start a families on rides that kind of ease them in, that are open air, that get them used to a ride moving underneath them, and then kind of work them up to some of those bigger rides if possible. Have you done that with your family? What did you do different after the Epcot travel? Did you start at open air rides?
It's funny how when something goes badly, you learn so much from that. So I do realize how much, like you said, where you're starting off for the day. Setting the tone for the day is is a big deal because it's either going to make them excited to go on things or it's going to make them hesitant, and it's this kind of negotiation all the time, for the day. So that's something I learned from that, and just how important it is to be able to gauge your kids, and but Disney thankfully has something for everyone. I mean, happiest place on earth, you're going to find something that delights everyone. And so that, and also, like you said, where we're either before the trip or even when we're in line, just kind of talking through what to expect. And, I have been on the Little Mermaid, the Journey of the Little Mermaid ride more times than I can count, but it's because it's delightful. And part of it was because it's such minimal movement, and the initial one where it spins the clamshell and you go down, we had that moment, but we had been able to talk about it, and they knew it was coming, and so we just had a great time. So I think setting expectations, even in their little minds, is really helpful.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. And picking those rides too, like of a favorite character, something that you think like, okay, this is a good, Little Mermaid is a favorite character. This is a good introduction to riding a ride. Or Winnie the Pooh is another popular one in Magic Kingdom that's slower, that kind of kids can get used to that, and then they can move into something that maybe is a little bit more, like I know I usually save Pirates of the Caribbean for at least 2 hours in, because it's dark and there's a drop, and you want kids to be pumped about the experience and not freaking out about, like, that's not a great first ride. It's just, and it's a water ride on top of it. So, if they've already ridden
which has definitely a different feel, for sure.
Like, I'm in a boat, it's moving, like, if you've already done It's a Small World, and then you ride Pirates of the Caribbean, your child has some frame of reference for this boat ride's not going to kill me. I'm going to be okay, and so that, there's a process, as we as agents help a family when we structure their day. When you're, and I think even more than like the order of the rides too, like you said, taking cues from your kid. This is somewhat controversial Disney topic, but did you guys do naps? Did you guys go back? Did you take breaks?
So we had a stroller, and which is not my favorite thing in Disney, but when you have a 1-year-old, it's pretty inevitable, right? So the beauty of that was that when they were younger, we could do nap time, between the stimulation and the heat, and just, they do kind of crash, but it was great because our youngest could nap. Well, we did it with the other kids too, but they could nap in the stroller. You're covering some ground. They get to see things. It's not like their whole day stopped, So, and then also, I'm a big fan of, at some point in the day, if you have, so we have a family of 6, so we will break up. My husband will take our boys, I'll take the girls, and we'll have a time where they're doing bigger things and seeing more things, and we're standing by the fountain, admiring the fountain. We're, maybe going to LeFew's Brewery, or LeFew Brew. I'm blanking on the name of we're Gaston.
Yes.
Watching Gaston is one of my favorite parts. He is so hilarious and so cocky and perfect Gaston that if we're going to stare at a fountain, it's over there, because he's so funny to me. So that's, I think, a big help, is if you're going with a family with kids, let them sleep in the stroller, or make sure you're on top of snacks. No one likes to be hangry going through a park, right?
Yeah.
I don't care where you are. That's not a good scenario for your kids. So it's carrying through, hey, 2:00, it's going to go downhill, so let's prepare for it. You older kids are going to do a ride with dad or grandma or whoever, and I'm going to hang back. And so I feel like that makes it for a more successful day, is when you don't ignore how your family runs. You actually just embrace it and work it into your day.
Yeah. And breaks, I think, whether you go back to a hotel, or you figure out a way to do that in the park, are really important. So, if you are traveling with all littles, I know sometimes we send people back to the hotel to truly sleep, because if everybody's going to be asleep at you may not want to have to be at the park.
Right, for sure.
But as you're dealing with different ages, that's a great tip to like, okay, we're going to go let the bigs do some of their stuff. We're going to go let the littles chill and relax. And sometimes people don't realize if they've not been to Disney World before, it can be very, very hot in the afternoons. I mean, it's always warm, but it can be extremely hot in the afternoons. And for littles, that's a lot. You need to keep them hydrated and drinking. And like you said, whether you're packing snacks or you're buying them in the park, like, I know sometimes as a parent and a mom, like, I'd rather come prepared with extra snacks than be sitting there and be like, I don't want to pay $5 for animal crackers. So if you're that parent, if it's hard for you sometimes to stomach like that, make sure you bring your own snacks. Something people do not realize, you can bring your own food into Disney. So, you're like you said, keeping those kids fed. Most people don't realize you're walking sometimes 10 miles a day at Disney, I think is the average. So like you said, having a stroller that's comfortable, that you feel comfortable handling and moving your kids in, which I would say is not the Disney strollers. Like, I don't know who those are designed for. Either bring your own or rent one down there. I'm like, it's like pushing a boat. I don't know. Their strollers to me are not great. And that I don't know. No. Anyway, so make sure you have a comfortable stroller for your littles if you're coming.
And with stroller, also making sure that you actually park it in the stroller parking, because the cast members whisk them away and tuck them into where you don't always know. And so you are wasting time, and suddenly all the strollers look the same. And so you're trying when you see. So that is really important if you have a stroller, is to make sure you are properly placing it in the stroller parking area, because it will be moved. And so it's better to put it there yourself so you know where you put it, than kind of doing that, where did it get moved? So that's important. And a lot of
people too mark their strollers with like a sign or some kind of like antenna. Some people try to do it with balloons, and we don't recommend that, because everybody does it with balloons, and now you have yet again a black stroller with balloons that you're looking for, versus something that's more unique, that makes it easier for you to find your stroller. Very true. When you come out. So like, as you did you guys ever do rider swap with your bigs and littles?
We haven't. People do that. I haven't run into where we've needed to. Our girls are a little more hesitant, and I don't have to get on that big ride. I'm more content kind of facilitating and watching them have fun. And but the dynamic of our family is my husband loves the big rides, and we have two very adventurous boys. So we don't really have to personally, but people do, for families that need that, it is a great option for them, for sure.
And not everyone realizes that it's available. Their last trip, well, you know what? We will on our upcoming one, because our last trip, we had a 1-year-old, and we left her at home because she was so little at the time, and our other two had not been as bigger kids. And we knew we wanted to hit those big rides and do them, and it just wasn't going to be a good fit for our 1-year-old, so she stayed with Grandma and had a much better time. And so we did it on our last trip, but on an upcoming one, we will, because like some families, and this is where I think, like, we have a big gap. So I have 12, 10, and then 3. So we have almost two different families. And I see this a lot too with groups, like with grandparents that are all traveling together. They can get that age spread sometimes, really, like you said, like you have the adventurous ones on the older end, and then you have this whole little posse of smaller people, or people that are traveling like with grandparents for the first time with an infant, like the first grandchild that's going to Disney World. I see this a lot too. So then the adults also want to ride, right? But the baby can't, not tall enough or that kind of thing. And so I think we will, because there's certain rides, like my older daughter loves fast rides. Like she'll do Tower of Terror, she'll do Rock and Roller Coaster, all of it. And I won't even do some of those. Her dad takes her.
No.
So I don't mind staying back on those, but there are other ones I think for families, especially if this is kind of like a one-time big family trip, like you don't go frequently or don't plan to, where mom and dad or grandma and grandpa or whoever really want to get to experience Seven Dwarfs Mine Train with that child. It's then such a bummer to be like, okay, well, who's going to stay with the sleeping baby and feel like they're going to miss out, when Rider Swap really makes that possible so that the first group can go and ride while someone waits, and then then you can then take the kids with you again on Rider Swap and ride that ride with them so that everybody gets to experience that. Nobody feels left out. And I think for certain rides that if they're really a big deal to you to get to ride with your child, I'm like, yeah, I can skip Rock and Roller Coaster, I can skip Tower of Terror, like whatever, like that's not a big deal. But then there's others that I'm like, oh, I'm so glad I got to experience Seven Dwarfs Mine Train with my son because it became his favorite ride, and I would have to just totally have missed it. I would have been so sad. So I'm glad that program's available to families. Sometimes people don't realize it's there, and it doesn't require waiting in line again, and it can save you so much time and still allow a variety of ages, to experience the parks and absolutely, and still have a fabulous time and not feel like you're being pulled or have to sit by the fountain. You have other options if you don't want that. Oh. But some of us are tired at one after pushing a stroller all day and would be happy to get a Dole Whip and
just chill out. And just gas on.
Yes, and just rest because it can be absolutely crazy. So I'm trying to think of other what are some of your top tips for families who are taking littles or just in general who are going to Disney?
Sure, I think it's really, even if it's a family or a group or whoever, my first thing is, what are your must-sees? I like to gauge what will make them walk away from the trip and feel like it was a success. Because Disney is so big, you can't possibly hit every nitty-gritty little, So it's kind of netting out, what do you want to see? For young families, are we Mickey and Minnie? Like, we've got to meet them. That's what I like to know. So those, for my first big tip, it would be, let's kind of net out what are must-sees where you're going to walk away and feel like you had the best day. Yeah. And not just kind of setting, as we mentioned, the expectations, right? Like, if your expectations are in a good place, you're going to have fun. Yes. But if you're expecting something, maybe you haven't quite realized what you're expecting out of the day, you're going to come away maybe feeling deflated that my kid didn't love Peter Pan like I did, so having your must-sees, being realistic with expectations. I don't care where you go with a 2-year-old and a 3-year-old. It's not easy all the time, but if we can kind of plan for it, we can make it so much smoother. And one thing that I do when I'm kind of planning out a client's itinerary is I am very detailed of putting in where the bathrooms are. So you're traveling with a 3-year-old, like, you need to know, they give you a 3-minute warning of, I need a bathroom, So I like to let people know, okay, well, when you're at Buzz Lightyear Space Ranger, there's a bathroom right here, putting that in. And then also snack options. And goodness knows, for the parents, if you're going to go sit and watch the parade, go get a Starbucks off Main Street. Yeah. Do yourself a favor.
Or if you're walking into the park, because Disney mornings start so early, you want to be there first thing. Those first 2 hours, you can get in 25% more than the rest of the day. Starbucks is not named Starbucks at Disney World, for those of you who need your caffeine fix. And so it's right on Main Street. They have product placement done very well for that product, and you can literally get your coffee on the way to the castle.
Yes, for sure. So that's those are some of my kind of top tips. But just Disney is so fun with young kids. They are just, everything is new. Well, I don't care how old you are. Yeah. It is fun. But watching their faces light up, there's just nothing like it. So I just like to know, hey, who do we need to see? Are you obsessed with Tinkerbell? Like, let's make sure you go see Tinkerbell. And just, yeah, just preparing for the day and being flexible, because kids have a mind of their own. And so it's not always, not always the smoothest, but if we can plan for it and set realistic expectations, it's going to be a great day.
Yeah. I know I usually end up telling my clients, like, they'll tell me what all they want to do, or sometimes people send us their plans on what they think would be great. And then I have to tell people, like, okay, that's great. You're going to need to back off to 75%. Like, everybody tends to overstuff their days at Disney. I mean, it is not a cheap trip, and people want their money's worth, want their value, totally understand that. But the best way to actually get that is to plan at 75% of what you would probably like to do, because it gives you that room for bathroom breaks, for the child that doesn't like the way their shoe is fitting right then, and you're going to have to stop and deal with that, and low blood sugar moments. And I know, like, when I plan for families, especially with littles, like I'll heavy push their morning. Like, I'll structure their morning, which is a less busy time at the parks anyway, but we do more in the morning, knowing that the kids wear out as the day and the heat increases, and leave that afternoon more flexible for the pace of, okay, where are they at right now? Like, how much can they handle? Here are some rides you can go do if you feel like it, or you can go park it at, the Tiki Room for 3 cycles because it's air conditioned. Letting families then, and that's how part of how we structure, I think, to make it successful, is building flexibility in and not overstuffing your days, and especially with things that require a whole lot of reservations. Now then I have to have my kid happy by the time we hit Bibbidi Boppity Boutique. And so making sure that, we're really structuring that in a way that allows the trip to flow smoothly. And like you said, going into it knowing I'm not going to do this like an adult would do Disney. I'm not going to jam pack it. Sometimes people are used to going to amusement parks with the mindset of, I'm going to ride as many rides as I possibly can. And Disney is not a good place to do that. Disney is a much better place to walk in, not with a 3-year-old. Much better to walk in going, I am here to make magical moments and to see it through their eyes. Like, I think one of my top tips as an agent would be, go into it like to celebrate where they are at that stage. Like, I think sometimes as parents, especially with littles, like, littles are a lot. I have a 3-year-old, like, and they can be a lot. They can be a little bit of extra. But, going into it with the mindset of, like, okay, but they're only this age right now. And they will, and so let's experience Disney and this trip through their eyes at this stage, and not, push the trip to what we would consider like an older kid's schedule. That isn't going to serve anybody well and leave everybody disappointed. Since I said we have kind of multi ages in our family, we would go into a trip with the mindset that we would warn our older kids, like, who are used to accommodating their 3-year-old sister anyway. But we would tell them, like, this is not your deal. Like, we're going to try to get you some of your favorite experiences, but this trip is going to be focused on your younger sister. And so that's going to mean princess experiences. That's going to mean slower rides. That's going to mean some of these other things that might be different than what you've experienced in the past. So they can clue into, and they can set their expectations. Like, okay, I'm not going to go on Space Mountain 4 times. Like, that's not fun for my baby sister who has to wait, right? And so I think really celebrating where they're at, right? It's own, like, to see things through a 3-year-old's eyes is pretty darn magical. And going into it with that expectation, I think, is really key. And so one thing, actually, we didn't mention this before, that can really freak out kids that we didn't say, is actually character interactions.
Yes!
Some children are utterly terrified of characters. So that is something we do warn people about. Like, sometimes parents do have it built up in their head, right? Minnie and Mickey, we're going to meet him. And then this child sees this big character, and they are just overwhelmed and petrified.
Ours was Hollywood and Vines, yes.
Yes.
When our youngest was 2 and Goofy started approaching, it was the most blood-curdling scream, and the restaurant just stopped. And just that moment of, oh no, like she was having none of it, and it was my kid, you know, and it was, but they're so used to that, you know. Goofy kind of went and hid. Yeah. They're so used to kids.
They're very good at playing with the kid. Yeah. But
and so but it was just funny because I wasn't anticipating that, and she's just clawing at me, you know, because and she eventually warmed up. But again, you're so right. It's one of those things that you learn from of, oh yeah, my other 3 were perfectly fine in this scenario, but of course you have one where they just are, overwhelmed.
Ours was the Easter Bunny. First child took them to see the Easter Bunny and flipped a lid, crawling, like you said, like crawling to get away, like tearing, you know. I'm like, okay, and that, you know, they were older when we went to Disney, so it wasn't as big, but clued me in real fast that some kids do not enjoy.
Oh, for sure.
Or even get overwhelmed when they meet real life characters like a princess. Sometimes that, like, in one sense, meeting your idol that you've seen on screen for some kids is like such an overwhelming emotional experience for them. They don't know what to do. Like,
yes. It's a lot to process.
It's a lot. Yeah. Like, I'm just, you know, almost like you see people who get starstruck as adults, right? Like when they, you know, like meeting Beyonce, you know, and you'd be like, and they do like crazy stuff, you know, where they're like, you know, like, you know, or whatever, or they just shut down and can't talk, you know. I mean, like, adults do that. Well, kids do it with like princesses, and so one thing you can do to help your kid, I guess this would be another tip too, is like you can show them, like there are, like I said, videos of this or pictures of it, and show and explain to them what that would, you know, like, oh look, here's a person meeting, you know, a princess, and they can see that, okay, this is what happens. Because a lot of the princess lines now, you don't actually, like, there's, you can't see the people in front of you sometimes.
Right.
Meeting them. So there's no model for it. Or if you have older kids, they can set an example for the younger ones by helping them, like, hey, I'll hold, you know, let me go meet them. Now you can come too, and helping. And I think too, even giving your kids some suggestions sometimes, especially for boys. Like I know the owner of our agency, Laura, does this with her grandchildren who are going to meet princesses, and they're boys. And so sometimes people are like, you know, whatever. But she hammed it up. She was at a character meal, and I know she told them, like, okay, you know, compliment their shoes and see what happens, because the characters are great at interacting and doing those things. And so of course they like fawned all over the boys, you know, after the compliment, and like you know, or like if you're at 1900 Park Fair, and you meet the stepsisters, who are some of the funniest characters. Cinderella's stepsisters are some of the funniest characters at Disney. You can like compliment them, and they get real sassy, or like tell them that you think that they're the prettier sister. Like, I know that you're prettier than Drusilla. I'm just saying. And they will ham it up and react, and it's super fun. Even with older kids too, I think that's like when they may have outgrown that stage, but they're still going for a younger sibling. Yeah. Like doing some of those things, or if the child won't do it, even you can put your teenager in an awkward position just for your own entertainment, which some of us would do, right?
Totally
and and be like, oh, Drusilla, my son totally thinks you're the prettier sister, and they will ham it up then but he doesn't want to tell you, he's just too embarrassed, you know, and they will ham it up with them, and it can create those really funny family moments that I think, but it is something to keep in mind, that your child may not be, you know, this magical. And if your kid has never had that kind of experience, sometimes it's best to start with a real person, and then move into the stuffies, or to see one walking around and point it out, so that because it's weird. I mean, if we're really honest, like as adults, it's weird. So to help your child, I think ease into some of that is really, really important. But sorry, I'm rambling. I keep going on.
I think, no, fine. I think also you brought up, in bringing up the dining experiences and character just where you get to meet them and while you're eating. Something that came to mind while we were talking with younger kids is when I have a family with young kids, I try to book their sit-down dinner earlier because kids tend to eat earlier. They need to. But a big tip, too, is when people are debating about which dining plan to pick. I always encourage you want to have a sit-down a table service. You want to be able to sit because it's hot, it's long, and to go into an air-conditioned restaurant, sit down, have someone bring you food, just relax and be able to talk about what you've been experiencing. You want that. And I know sometimes people are, of course, cost is an issue, and you're trying to make it fit for you. That is one thing I really think people miss out on, especially probably, I don't care what age, but especially with young kids, to be able to sit down, be in air conditioning, breathe, just kind of compose yourself, and be able to talk.
Because they're bringing you water. Like, your kids will sit there at a restaurant and drink, at least mine will, because they're used to that. But at a quick service restaurant, I'd be having to refill their drinks.
It makes your day so much... It's just a smoother part of the day. And so that is something that, as we were talking, came to mind. And it's so fun when you're able to experience the characters coming to you or watching them from a distance. Again, the air conditioning and having people bring you the drinks where you can just breathe, hang out with your kids, and just kind of gear up for maybe the evening.
Yeah.
With young kids, you might not be staying as long, but having the meal maybe around 5:30, trying with the younger kids, because even when you sit down, there's still a waiting time, and so trying to push it a little earlier for the younger kids so we can avoid the hangry, the grumpy, get refreshed and enjoy the rest of the evening.
Yes. I think that is absolutely right on. And so you said such a great thing where you're like, hey, make sure you pick your select rides. Like, what are your must-dos? And a lot of people have trouble comparing everything that's available at Disney, right? It's really hard to get like a full 4-park overview, like what's available everywhere, what should I be we have a cheat sheet for you all. If you look up in the description, you will find a link to get that cheat sheet, which is our 4-park overview cheat sheet, where it lists everything that is available for you at Disney for experiences, so that you as a family can really quickly and easily see what parks might be the best fit for you, as well as what experiences, like you could kind of go through and pick like, okay, or circle, these are the things. So if you need that, go ahead and click on that link to sign up for the newsletter that will get it to you, which is our 4-park cheat sheet. I thank you so much, Elizabeth, for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. This was so fun.
I love I feel like people miss out on getting to hear agents talk, because to me it's like the best part of our job is when we all get to sit around and talk about what we love doing and how we love to help people do this. So for those of you who might like to work with Elizabeth on your next Disney trip, because she is fabulous, you can find her, I will put it in the description as well, at elizabeth@globaldreamvacations.com. And we just cannot wait to be back at Disney. We're all eager, I know, hopefully anticipating the next few days that we are going to be able to be back soon, planning magical trips. But right now is, in fact, the time to be planning. If you are planning on going the rest of the year, absolutely needs to be done immediately. Or if you're thinking of 2021, make sure you reach out to Elizabeth, or myself, because we are currently planning our making lists for next month when packages become available, so we can get all of our clients. Next year is going to be busy at Disney. We are anticipating less availability. It's important to book early. Thank you so much, Elizabeth, for being here today.
Thank you so much, Mandy, for having me. This was fun.
Yeah, this was fun. All right, travelers, until later, travel smart.
All right, bye.